Hi to all of our friends from Queensland and allies in systemic advocacy. So we just met tonight, which is my tonight, I guess, in your morning on February 20th, 2025. So I just wanted to do a quick sort of summary video and just make a couple points about some things that we covered for today. So as you know, we're covering in all these sessions the 5 essential skills of systemic advocacy. What we looked at tonight were interviews and mapping. And in particular, what we talked about is that there are 2 types of interviews to do: big picture interviews and practitioner interviews. So those big picture interviews, again, are leaders, they're politicians, ministers, people who are high ranking in their institution. And sometimes they're figureheads, sometimes they're politically appointed, but they're someone who has a lot of power in their institution. So that's a different sort of interview than a practitioner interview. And so a practitioner interview is what we practiced tonight with our friend Rhonda Martinson. Rhonda was, she used to be a sexual violence prosecutor. And I sort of modeled with you how I would do that sort of interview with Rhonda. Now, one of the things, of course, that we thought about and that we did with you is that we focused really on the 8 methods, in particular as it relates to those practitioner interviews. So you're thinking about the 8 methods for the big picture interviews. However, one of the things to know is people who are in those positions aren't really processing cases. So you want to be thinking about, what's the mission, purpose, and function, right? That's the one of these sort of 8 methods that you really want to understand for those big picture interviews. But you really want to ask yourself, what's the goal for those meetings, right? So if I get to meet with the most powerful person in the Queensland Housing Agency, for example, and I'm going to have a short amount of time, what's going to be my goal during that meeting, right, of someone in a big picture sort of interview? What do I want to learn? What do I want to accomplish? And what do I want to be thinking about? Okay. Now, for the practitioner interview, like we did with Rhonda today, what we're really sort of thinking about then is to really understand, how do these 8 methods organize what any practitioner would be doing in this agency? So as I talked about with you about today a little bit, you really want to be thinking about, for example, if Rhonda's that prosecutor, I'm asking Rhonda questions, but I have to really understand, what about what Rhonda said is institutionally organized, or it's because that's how Rhonda does it? Because I want to understand, if anyone was a prosecutor in that agency, how are they organized to do this job, to prosecute cases, for example, on sexual violence, right? And so that's what I want to be really thinking about. Now, one of the points that I wanted to make also about this in terms of practitioner interviews and big picture interviews, when we sort of did a reflection session, it was actually Ria from Micah sort of brought up, this thing about, it's part of it is like even setting up the interview and people kind of wondering, what are you doing and what's this about? Well, one of the things I want to say to you is that, well, yes, we do want you to sort of request and do a formal interview. I know that all of you have meetings with other agencies all the time. And what I want you to be thinking about in either those meetings or in discussions is, I want you to be thinking about these 8 methods, right? So if you're in an integrated response meeting, right, and somebody's talking with you about something that they do or think about, I want you to be thinking, okay, how do I think about these 8 methods? And what's the question that I want to ask this practitioner, right, when they're talking about this right now, right? So it may be someone who you really have a good relationship with, you rely on them, but you want to understand, right? So when that person speaks about what they do, so let's say that they're, for example, in child safety, for example, and you're really working on your relationship with them. I may be thinking about, okay, so you've just talked about something that your institution does that I think is, a really helpful practice. Like, where would I sort of or learn about that in your agency? So for example, like, do you have policies that sort of say that this is what's supposed to happen? Or is there a form that a child safety worker has to fill out, right? So that's the sort of thing is that I wanted you to be thinking about, is not just the interviews, right? But I want you to be thinking about anytime you're engaging with another agency, is to be thinking about how is that practitioner or how is that leader organized by these 8 methods. And then we didn't get to talk a lot about mapping today, but the easiest way for me to describe this for you is mapping is what some people, and I know Laura's also called it sort of like mind mapping, but you're creating a visual to understand how cases are organized in this system, okay? So when a practitioner is speaking, you're just sort of making, a visual representation for yourself that you're going to keep going back to and you're going to keep referring to each time. Okay, we'll say a little bit more about the mapping next time. I really want to just focus on this quick sort of wrap-up video here about big picture interviews, in particular practitioner interviews, and how to think about the 8 methods. Because one of the things to remember is that when institutions are not meeting the needs of victims, that is because of some feature of how that system is organized is causing that gap. And also one of these features or more of these 8 methods is also the solution to closing that gap and making it better for survivors. Okay, so what we have here is we have these 5 essential skills of systemic advocacy that are helping us see these 8 methods in the institution. Okay, so we will see you again, your time zone, March 20th, 2025. And in Brisbane time zone, 9:30 a.m. to noon. Now, the one thing is because of daylight savings time is that we wanted you to know, it seemed like on a couple people's calendar, it said we were meeting an hour earlier at 8:30. That's not the case. We are meeting 9:30 to 12 p.m. your time, Brisbane. And just to be thinking about for our next online session, number 3, start to think about what practitioner do I want to interview for my project? Who's a big picture interview that I would really like to be able to talk to for my project? And then we gave you that worksheet that has that has the 8 methods on them. We want you to start to identify 2 possible questions for each method that you want to focus on for your project specifically. Okay, so that we're sort of building up your systemic advocacy lens and analysis for your project each time. So, okay, so my goal was to keep this under 10 minutes, and I'm going to try this thing where if you don't, like me, you have a hard time reading all these emails all the time, but you'll watch a video that's under 10 minutes. That's a summary that you can refer back to. This is for you. You may have already stopped it though, and you don't have enough time to listen to 10 minutes. That's okay too. Reach out to us anytime. I'm Melissa Skaya. My brilliant colleague partner is Laura Williams. We thank Rhonda Martinson for her time today, and we will see you again on March 20th, 2025. Contact us in between sessions as well. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.